Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Ben Kinney. Today, Chad Hyams, Bob Stewart are both joining us. Today, we dive in to something that I've studied a lot in my career and in my life. Maybe because I'm insecure about it. Maybe because I'm fascinated by the science. Bob and Chad, we're going to talk about two things. One, body language, and two, lying, and how they kind of relate to each other. Now, body language, when you study it, you'll realize that your keys to persuasion and influence, which is leading, coaching, selling, recruiting, marketing, all those sort of things, is very closely tied to your ability to observe the other party, right, Chad? Listening to what they say and what they don't say, yep. and observing their physical presence and their energy.
Absolutely.
Right? We've been in situations, Bob, where you look in a room and you could tell when people are intrigued or when people are unplugged. Yeah. Right? We've sold things to people and you could tell that they were not interested, or done interviews where the people wanted to leave, or you've been in a conflict with a spouse or a partner or a friend or an employee, and you're in this room and you feel something's off, but you don't know what. Becoming a master of understanding body language will allow you to minimize the amount of people that lie to you, to increase your conversion rates in all the areas that we discussed. But honestly, the power of it for me is it helps me find the truth. Now, here's what I mean. Give me an example, boys. Why does somebody lie to you? Just give me one answer, Chad.
Because they're embarrassed by what the truth actually is.
Yeah, they're embarrassed. What's another reason somebody lies to us, Bob?
You haven't earned their trust to tell them the real story yet.
Yeah, they don't trust you. They're embarrassed. They're insecure.
Yep.
What about they're just trying to screw you?
Yeah.
Like they're just trying to flat out manipulate you, sucker you into buying something or hiring them, right? Yeah. Sometimes there is an evil intent.
Yes.
Since we tend to limit who influences us and who we like to, we want to limit the amount of bad people we work with. In most of my experience, that hasn't been the case that it's something bad. Usually, when I notice somebody is lying, I get it from a body language cue. And what that tells me is they're insecure, they're nervous, I haven't earned their trust, right? There's something else going on in their life that just happened that morning or the night before that they haven't said. So we want to try to dive into this and figure out, how can we learn from these cues and then decipher it in some way? So that's what today's call is about.
So we're going to be able to decipher other people's body language and also hopefully maybe even be able to control ours a little bit more by understanding these lessons.
That's a really good point, Chad, because once we learn how body language can be interpreted, our natural posture or these natural tendencies that we have, right, may be sending the wrong message out to people.
Sure. Some people are just comfortable standing with their arms crossed. I mean, I'm looking across at you guys right now, and Bob's got his arms crossed where he's recording, and it doesn't necessarily mean he's closed off. That might just be a comfortable position.
That's actually one of the common misconceptions or myths around body language, the arms, right? Most people would say, oh yeah, that means they're closed off and he doesn't like Chad. But it could just be that I'm soothing myself. It could be I'm cold. Is it cold in here?
And it
right
could
now?
be you just don't like me.
That could be too, sure.
Could be that too. So Ben, talk with us about this body language, because it's actually a language we probably don't even know we're speaking a lot of the time. Help us understand body language a little more, so that not only can I tell what Bob is thinking, I can also pay attention to the cues that I'm sending out, maybe unwillingly.
Yeah, so some of the things we're going to talk about today is eye contact or lack thereof.
Yep.
Facial expressions. Bob, we use this term a lot in our business called microaggressions. Yeah. What is a microaggression?
It's just a bunch of little things that all taken independently wouldn't really annoy someone that much. When you stack them all up in a big pile, they have a lot of, they could really annoy somebody.
in this science that we're studying today, we're not looking for microaggressions. We're looking for microexpressions. Little tiny things that become a tell. Now, one little aggression, back to business, doesn't normally cause a customer to stop working with you, but a whole bunch of them does.
Yeah.
Just like one single body language tell doesn't mean that somebody's lying, uncomfortable, attracted to you, or any of those sort of things. You're looking to build a case, right? And that might simply cue you into asking better questions or deeper questions.
That's one of the things, a lot of this research, you got to kind of look into, I can't remember his first name, Joe Navarro, the FBI lying expert.
Yeah, he wrote a book called The FBI's Guide to Reading Body Language.
And one of the things that he talked about in there was that exact concept you just said, that it's very rare that somebody's body language or a tell tells you specifically that it's a lie, but it gives you signs or a sense that you should go in on that thing a little more, right? I should get into that question a little bit deeper. There's something there that I just asked that made him uncomfortable. Let me explore that thing a little more. And you're a master at that, Ben.
What I'm learning is paying attention to this episode will improve my poker game.
Yeah. It could. It could.
Not your online poker game, but if you're going to play at the casino in person with 8 other people around you,
with a mask on currently.
Yeah, with a mask.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that has to be tough. I haven't thought about that in the poker world. That's a really good point, right?
Bunch of tells being taken away. All right, so Ben, keep going through this.
Things like posture.
Yep.
Positioning of your hands or your feet. These things all create signals that would allow you to detect something.
Okay.
Boredom, distraction. They've already heard this. Could simply be that they're tired. They're irritated. You just said something that offended them. They're really excited. They're interested. They're eager. They're ready to take the next step. All these things are things that we can dive deeper into once you study it. Now, Bob you said, I'm really good at that, or some sort of phrase. You made it.
Yeah, I think you're a master at taking some cue that person's giving to you, oftentimes not even something they said, or maybe it is like a way they said it, but a lot of times it's body language cues, and then kind of going in and asking questions around that thing and diving in and exploring something that they're not even really that willing to share with you, but you just sense it's there behind those movements.
Yeah, I call that chasing a rabbit. So you don't go out running around in the woods trying to catch a rabbit, right? What happens is you see a track or you see a rabbit and then you chase it, right? So I'm looking for a sign that says I should chase this rabbit and see where it ends up, or chase these tracks, so to speak. But it's not particularly, I appreciate the compliment, Bob, that I'm good at it. It's that I've invested years and years into reading books, watching videos, studying things, becoming really a student of Joe Navarro, who's probably one of the foremost writers and creators of content around body language.
Is he the character that Robert De Niro plays, and is he who that's based on? Right, when I'm watching you, he was the human lie detector.
Oh, you're talking about Meet the Parents?
Thank you very much. Right, maybe he was an FBI. That's who he's based after.
Yeah, good point. So let's get back to the science a little bit. So you have different systems at different parts of your brain. There's this thing called the limbic system. The limbic system cannot be regulated cognitively with your brain. It's the honest brain. It's a reliable source of information. Here's what I mean. When I say something to you, your physical response, these little tiny tells, will show up before your brain says to don't punch this guy in the face, hide that what your dad said was offensive, right? Like there's these little tiny things, and you've seen it, like a little smirk, a corner of their lips or their eyes, or just like a shocking 1 second. It happens so quick, your body can't actually control it. Afterwards, once you think of it, your intelligence, right, allows you to moderate your response. Take a deep breath, right? But you're looking for those little micro tells that are sent from your limbic system.
So it's the reaction versus the response.
Yeah.
I have one of these, Ben. And my wife is totally dialed in on it. And I've got, you mentioned the lip. I do this little thing with my lip when I'm frustrated. And so when we're having a discussion and she sees me do it, and she calls me out on it all the time, she'll stop and say, I just said something that frustrated you. What was it? And she's right. And depends on what mood I'm in, I'll tell her or not. But I mean, she nails me on it, and it is literally something I can't control. It just happens on my face before my brain even has the time to say, "Hey, don't do that."
So why do people not observe these tells? What is the common problems that stop people from these observations?
They're not practiced in them would be one. Like, they don't spend enough time around that person to know, right? I mean, that would be a very common one, I think. Most people, my wife, she obviously knows, right? But most people wouldn't see that tell on my face.
Here would be something that shows up in my mind when I see people. They're thinking about what they're going to say next, not watching the person post the answer, right? They don't have their questions so organized in their brain. They're thinking about what they're going to say next. They're not watching the person respond. Or they're taking notes on what the people say, and they're not looking at the person to see the actual details of their response. They're not paying attention. It's very important. I will say things like, would it be okay if I take notes? I will ask a question. I will watch the response, and then I will write the notes. Because I'm looking for that little tiny non-verbal cue.
So to say that again, because we've heard you say this on many episodes, you take notes. You're a note taker. You'll sit there. It gives the respect to the person you're talking to. It lets them know that you're involved. Yet what you will do is before you go to start writing your notes, you will be keeping that eye contact on the question to see if there's any one of those tells that pops up. Nothing happens. Then you'll go and you'll write your notes. If that tell pops up, you might be able to dive in and find out a little bit more.
Yeah. My dad, I'll tell you two funny statements on, I think, why this is a little easier for me. Number one, my entire life, my dad was, look at me in the eyes when you're talking. And I've always had great eye contact.
Yeah, like scary.
Yeah, it actually like gets to people because I look in them in the eyes the entire time they were talking because I was raised that way.
Well, that brings up an interesting point before you get to number two. Some cultures, that would actually be considered aggressive.
Good.
So there are going to be some people in some cultures that some of these things you're going to cover here might be slightly different for in that situation, and it might be why some people feel that way.
And if you're observing the person, you might be able to slow down and say, I have a lot of eye contact. Like I really want to pay attention to what you're saying. And I know at times it can make people feel uncomfortable or insecure or bizarre. I just want to make sure that you know that that's okay. That's just how I am, right? And you call that out if you notice it.
Right, if you spot that they're uncomfortable by it.
The second thing that leads me to being maybe a better observer than others is I have super long girl eyelashes. And when I blink a lot or when my eyes are going down, the eyelashes kind of get caught and they get in my eye. So my entire life I would have been a super great mascara woman, cover girl or whatever. Yeah. I've always kept my eyes open. I don't blink a lot. My entire life, people say, like, do you ever blink? Well, I don't know.
So you're less than, on average, we blink about...
Wait, don't give that away yet. I was going to say, Ben, you're going to be a rule breaker to some of the giveaway tells that we're going to kind of point out to people because of that natural instinct you have to not blink.
Which means it could not be a tell for me.
Correct.
Because, Bob, people...
blink on average 6 to 8 times a minute.
That's a lot.
Yeah, every 10 seconds approximately.
But I don't. So... I'm kind of setting this conversation up to understand that nonverbal communication can be purposeful. You lean back, you fold your arms, and you're saying, right? And you're really thinking about how you're going to show to people. But the most powerful forms of nonverbal communication is the microtells. And that's what you have to become a master of studying. See, when you understand nonverbal communication, like at a really, really deep level, you just get a better grasp of people's feelings, their intentions, and you understand what they want in this particular situation. And these sort of nonverbal cues, they actually do cross cultures and ethnicities and nationalities and all that sort of stuff. But they're just cues. And they're things that, as you add them up, they could become a fact. So that, we're going to continue to use that disclosure. So before we dive into some real specific examples of body language, let's talk a little bit about some of the principles from What Everybody Is Saying, the Joe Navarro book. Yeah. You need to be an observer of your environment. You're carefully listening to verbal comments, to their physical presence, and one thing I add is to the pauses. And we'll talk about that when we get to lines. So I'm not going to say my comment right now. We're going to observe, and we're going to think about people within the context of the situation that we're in. Like, for instance, some people may not show up as their best self at a job interview.
Sure, they'd be nervous.
Yeah, they could just be nervous or scared, or a first date, or they have something really bad going on in their life. So you have to understand some big shock that just happened, an accident or trauma or what, right? Something like that. So you got to keep those things in mind. We're gonna talk about examples of very obvious tells, like the squeezing of your lips, right? And very small ones, like a little tiny curve down of your lips or up, or a little tiny wrinkle between the eyes. And then we're going to take note of these different tells through the process so that we know to fast forward, slow down, ask a tougher question. And we're going to pay attention, is there any sudden changes based on something you said or what you're doing? And you're going to look for a change in the environment. Because we want to try to identify between them truly being authentic, trying to hide something, being insecure, or flat out lying.
Which means we have to be subtle, I guess would be the right word, about observing people. We don't want to be obvious that I'm just sitting here kind of watching everything Bob does as he speaks, because he's going to start to realize that he can manipulate the situation by doing certain things.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Joe's book, he talked about freeze, fight, or flight. He said that it's something natural that our bodies do, and it's actually sent from the limbic part of the brain. And it's done for thousands and thousands of years because it's a key to our survival.
Sure, we've all heard fight or flight.
Yeah.
He's adding in there freeze, which a lot of people don't think about.
Well, it actually is a natural reaction,
sure. Yep.
Right? These reactions, as I said, are driven by that part of the brain that we've been discussing, and it's done to help us process information. Now, the first one, freeze.
Yep.
We tend to freeze if we feel threatened or exposed by somebody's comments, something we see, or we feel physically in danger. When you think of the movies and you see something happen, a shooting or something like that, and you see the one person just standing there in the middle of the crowd not doing anything, right? We all freeze. But for how long do we do that? Mm. And when you're having conversations with somebody, you can notice and see when they freeze. That could be better described as a pause.
Yep.
Right? There's something that's happening right there. Number 2, flight. In the wild, right, back when we were throwing spears and stuff, right? That's when we were running.
Yep.
We're like, bear, right, and we run away, or saber-toothed tiger, whatever that might be. But there's body language that's saying the same thing without you actually leaving the room. An example of that would be turning your body away from somebody, as I just did that to Chad.
Yeah.
Closing your eyes, you kind of, by me looking at you, Bob, and me closing my eyes, it's kind of saying, I'm done with this conversation.
Yeah, longer than a blink, like even a second or two.
Yeah, another one, when you ever seen somebody take their fingers and pinch it between, like pinch the top of their nose and close their eyes, right? They're leaving that world right there. They're either daydreaming, thinking, or saying, I'm done with this situation. Putting their hands over their face or on their face, or literally just taking their feet and pointing them a different direction. Little tiny subtle things. These are all examples of flight.
So it's not necessarily they're going to run, yet they're going to give us some sort of indication that would lead us to believe they did in their head.
Well, it's not that they actually run, but they are going to run, right? I mean, some of those things like turning your feet towards the door, like their body wants to run. They don't actually run.
You're sitting in a conversation with your boss and he's lecturing you and you don't want to be there anymore. And you know you can't get up and leave because it's your boss, right? So your body is saying, I want to get the F out of here, right? But your boss isn't noticing that. He might think it's a great meeting. He leaves like, hey, thanks for the time today. And if he would have paid attention to that thing, he would have noticed Chad didn't want to be in that conversation. He was ready to go.
Sure.
The last one is fight.
Yep.
This is where we put up our dukes, right? Where we become more aggressive back. We lean into the conversation. We raise the volume of our voice, right? We get into these verbal arguments or physical encounters.
So you're putting voice in body language as well.
Tonality, volume.
Okay.
Those are all, instead of words, right? These kind of other cues.
So we got freeze, we got flight, and we got fight.
All things that show up in different ways that the vast majority of the population misses. They don't see you freezing, flighting, or fighting because you aren't physically doing it. You're doing these little tiny physical changes.
Got it.
Well, there's also what's called pacifying behaviors. We use these different behaviors to calm ourselves down. That could be like touching your neck, playing with your beard. Not that I can grow one. Chewing gum. Many people smoking. You see speakers often, Chad, they'll open the water bottle nonstop, take a drink. They definitely don't need water. They have 474 drinks of water up there. They don't need it, right? But they're doing it to like calm themselves down.
Yep.
Some of these pacifying behaviors actually indicate stress. The research would say excessive yawning, sliding your hands up and down your legs, maybe talking to ourselves.
Oh, I must.
The rate of your blinking as your blinking increases, that indicates stress.
Men will sometimes take their fingers and put it around their collar and make room because when you're under stress, your body temperature actually increases, so they're trying to cool down. See, if you notice somebody doing these types of behaviors, the point of this is that we should slow down, stop, and try to figure out what's stressing them out right now.
Sure.
And in interviews or conversations, sometimes I'll just simply say, can we take a break for a second? I have a personal question I want to ask you. Are you nervous right now or uncomfortable in any way? And then I'll just do my favorite move, which is just shut up. And I'll use my long eyelashes and I will just stare them into the soul, right? And I'll say nothing and wait for them to respond. And quite often in a job interview situation, the people will laugh and say, actually, yeah, I am kind of nervous. And in situations where I really feel like it's a good candidate, I might stop the interview right there and say, why don't we go for a walk? When you're walking, they aren't facing you. They're side to side, right? And we're having a more gentle conversation.
Yep.
It's more easy for them to open up. The key of this piece is that we notice that.
Okay.
Let's talk about things like arms.
Right.
When people take their arms and they put them behind their back, a lot of times that means that they feel that they're superior, or they're telling people, don't come close to me. Like, you're not going to get a hug from me. My arms are not available for hug. I'm not going to handshake, right?
Okay.
Arms can be used to say, this is my space. As you're flailing around, I know if you get too close, you're going to get schmacked.
No comment, Chad. I see you laughing over there. Chad knows I'm a flailer.
Yes.
I like my space. I need a little bit of space.
When people lean back and put their hands behind their head.
You do that one a lot.
Unfortunately, because that means that you're confident or dominant.
And that is you're sitting in that position right now, and that's a very common position when we're having a discussion or a meeting, that you'll lean back into that position. Boy, he just gave us a good one there, Bob.
Yeah, now I know that he's really bought in on that thing.
Now we know when that happens, what's going on. All right.
Could be. You guys could be just misreading it. You need another tell or two, right? giving hugs, touching somebody, patting them on the shoulder.
In a different world, of course, because now we're not supposed to come within 6 feet of each other.
Yeah. We tend to communicate how we are feeling emotionally with our hands.
Oh gosh, they speak volumes, don't they?
Good speakers use their hands to get everybody excited and make them
Bob.
feel welcome. And what bad speakers do, what Chad just did, points at people.
Yep.
When you point at people, you make them feel bad and you make them feel guilty. I'm just teasing Chad because he just pointed at Bob. You got to be careful with that. Try not to point at people unless you're lifting them up.
Yep.
And if you do point at them with your hands open, like you're reaching out to them, not with the "you're guilty, you're stupid" pointing finger, right? Little hands and finger cues like biting or playing with a ring could indicate insecurity or nervousness. Where people use their hands and their arms, what they're blocking could mean insecurity, like if they're blocking their torso. When you're protecting your torso, I think about when my mom was, before she passed, was upset. She would wrap her arms low, like around, like closer to her belly button, like this. And you could tell that she was upset and there was a problem, or that she was uncomfortable about something, the conversation, or nervous or something, right?
Almost like she was giving herself a hug.
Maybe.
Okay. So you've talked about the arms, you've talked about hands, our fingers, things that we're doing, our torso. We've talked about some of these things. Ben, we were definitely talking about the eyes, though.
Yeah, and I'm saving that one for a second, Chad, because
they're the window to our soul.
Yes. I want to move into this conversation of the potential that somebody could be lying.
Okay.
And when people lie, they do things like they restrict their arm movement and leg movement.
So they stay stiller.
Because they're restraining themselves.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
Like subconsciously, I don't want to give something away, so I'm going to do my best not to move.
Yeah, that'd be a good example. It's not necessarily deception, but they're restraining something. They're it's some sign of caution, right? So as we go into this idea of let's see if we can figure out when somebody is lying, you have to look for these little tiny cues, and a lot of them are going to show up in the face.
Got it.
Do you guys know what a glabella is?
Sounds like a place that you like to go shopping. No?
Glabella. I don't know. Is that like the area between your eyes?
Yeah. You know the area between your eyebrows, right above your nose?
Yeah.
Right? That is a big tell for a lot of things. Now, what's the problem nowadays with a lot of people in that area?
Nowadays?
Anyone?
We're not seeing anybody face to face. We got the unibrow growing.
Well, at least with the mask, you can still see the glabella.
Yes.
But with Botox,
yes.
you can't.
Botox. Dang it.
Got to remember that before big meeting, Botox injection.
Here's a good example. You guys ever seen a real smile and a fake smile?
Yeah, oh yes.
A real smile smiles with the eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
A fake smile is forced and just with the mouth. So when you see somebody who's smiling and you can see like their eyes and the whole area light up, it's a real smile.
We're getting better at that these days, right? Because we have to gauge if they're smiling based just on their eyes. You don't even know what their mouth is doing.
Yeah, it super freaks me out walking around anywhere because I'm like smiling at everybody under my mask, but I don't know if anybody's smiling back at us. So when we think about lying, let's talk about some of the cues specifically around lying. Number one, they change their head position quickly. A lot of head movement.
Would you find that their head movement is often going in that negative way, like they're almost shaking their head no? Or is it just movement in general, whether it's tilting or looking or just up and down?
It's a change in behavior from the rest of that time that you spent with somebody. Some people may do these things all the time.
Right.
It's just a tick or a habit. What you're looking for is a change. So if you get to a point of a conversation or interview or negotiation or whatever, and all of a sudden something changes, like there's a lot of head movement, that might be a tell.
Okay, got it.
Their breathing changes. Deeper. Right? Yep. I don't know if you guys could hear me take that deep breath.
I'm sure they could hear that.
Yeah. They stand very still. They actually freeze. They're trying not to move anything. Could be one little tell that could lead to finding out that they're lying.
Like you were just talking about earlier on that one. Yeah.
They repeat the same words or phrases. They say it over and over again. They touch or cover their mouth when they speak. They cover certain body parts.
Any specific ones? Just all of a sudden you'll notice that.
What you're looking for is a change.
Right.
Right? What's different? Why all of a sudden has that person's posture changed, right? Or what they're covering changing? What's going on?
Okay.
Liars tend to point a lot. Do you notice that Chad just pointed at you?
I didn't point this time, Bob.
Okay, hold on. I wasn't looking. And so when Ben said, did you notice Chad just pointed? Looked over and saw Ben pointing at Chad, by the way. So you were
We're all hypocrites. Shut up, Bob. Somebody provides too much information. Way too many details.
Right.
It becomes difficult for them to speak, especially people who normally get their point across. They're no longer doing that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, number 10, not true with me. They stare at you without blinking much.
Got it.
Not one of your tells.
When you read about CIA and FBI, and I've read a bunch of books on that. One of them's You Can't Lie to Me. And one of the comments they said was, when people tell you a story, like you're in an interrogation, they're trying to say, did Chad kill Bob? And we'll say, all right, Chad, start from the beginning. What happened? And Chad goes through this whole conversation. This is what happened first. I pulled up to the office and I saw Bob walk in and he was holding hands with my wife. Okay, what happened next, right? And when you go through this whole story, at the end, what the CIA or FBI will do is they'll say, all right, great. I want to make sure that I have everything clear. Let's go through that one more time. What was the last thing that happened? And they go through it in reverse. It's hard for people to tell the truth in both directions, especially when they made it up. See, lies are really hard to remember. That's why so often they catch people by getting them to tell the same story over and over and over again, because little tiny details change.
And those details, they provide too many of them because that's a tell, right? They're in there given a bunch of detail they shouldn't have been given to begin with, and then when forced to kind of recap it, reiterate it, do it again in reverse, those details change.
And this is why people get their story straight, right? That's that whole criminals saying, let's get our story straight, so that they're all telling the exact same one. So our advice from the Win, Make, Give podcast is, if you're going to do something you shouldn't, don't have too many details to your story when people start questioning you about it.
Right?
Awesome.
Now, I'm not a huge fan of lying. There is times when lying can be used for the greater good. But here's the problem with lying. It's too hard to remember,
Yep.
right? And I struggle with it. So if I'm in a position where I feel like I don't want to answer, and I feel like if I do answer, I have to lie to protect somebody's feelings or protect our best interests or whatever, normally what I do, here's my tell, I don't answer. Because I don't like to lie. So I'm just going to not answer. I will change the subject. I will move it to a new conversation, right? I will move forward because I don't want to lie. That make sense? So that would be my tell for anybody listening here.
I was a masterful liar earlier in my life. And I've realized over the years that, boy, telling the truth is just so much easier because you don't have to remember all the details to all the stories that you would make up.
We're going to go through a couple of very specific facial tells that could be indications that somebody's lying as we wrap up.
And you said that's because a lot of these tells are going to come from the face.
Yeah.
And the limbic system.
They're going to come before you can regulate.
Yeah,
Right. So you're going to see something on that face situation. So that's why we're going to look at these in detail.
Yeah.
All
Warren G doesn't show up for 2 or 3 seconds. The limbic system gets through there before he has a chance to, what, Bob?
Regulate.
Regulate. That's what I'm talking about. Eyes dart back and forth. People move their eyes back and forth when they feel uncomfortable. Not necessarily lying, but uncomfortable. That
Why?
could be a sign.
Why back and forth? Is there a reason to it?
They're looking for the exit.
Oh,
That goes
okay.
back to the limbic brain from when the saber-toothed tiger showed up, and I'm like, I got to get out.
How do I get out of here? Okay, got it.
Yeah. Which door can I run out of first? It's their escape route, right?
Got it.
Blinking. When people are stressed about things, or specifically lying, they may blink 5 or 6 times in a row. Not always. Some people just blink a lot.
You know, I was watching you earlier when you were just giving the whole situation about pretending Bob getting in trouble, and all. Your eyes were blinking. And then you went back to your normal about 12 seconds between blinks for you. That's about what it is. I was actually watching with a stopwatch to see. But then when you're getting into detail on something, that's when your eyes will lock open. And then you'll stare across at me and you'll be listening to what I'm saying, but you haven't blinked. There you go. There was the first blink in probably like 30 seconds.
So even in a scenario where he was making something up that he knew to be a lie, and we all knew it was a lie,
his eyes were blinking quickly.
Tells.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's the different sides of your brain. Like when you're saying something you know to be true, it should come out quickly. You have the facts, it's stored in there. When you're making something up, you have to access the creative side of your brain and you're processing it, right?
There's even a tell where when so if I'm a right-handed person, I'm generally using the left side of my brain to recall, and I'm using the right side of my brain to create. And so there's he talks about this, Navarro does, but a right-handed person will look up and to the left to recall details of a specific thing that happened. A right-handed person will look up and to the right to make up or lie about an answer, because those are the parts of your brain that either recall or create.
Okay, so not that you're an FBI agent, but maybe you want to know that about somebody. Are you going to open most situations by having them fill something out so you could figure that out? Because you wouldn't know by looking at me that I'm left-handed. And now all of a sudden, all those signals should, in theory, cross.
I wouldn't. And I'll tell you why, because I'm looking for lots of other tells too. And we'll walk through a little bit at the end. How do you confront somebody when you know or you have a feeling that there could be a problem? Next one, when somebody closes their eyes for more than a second.
Yeah, you mentioned that before, right? They're attempting to leave. That's that flight.
Or they're thinking something. They're trying to come up with an answer.
Got it.
That next one, the nonverbal, the pause. I can almost always tell when somebody doesn't want to give me an answer or somebody's going to lie just based on how long it takes them to respond. Because I know our people so well. When I ask them a question and it cuts them off guard, and they say, I knew immediately that they're thinking of an answer. Most likely what it means, they haven't done what I asked them to do. They're thinking, how do I respond when I know that he asked me to do something and I did not do it? That 1 second, I basically say, sucker, you didn't do it, did you? Bob laughs guiltily into the microphone.
Yeah, I'm watching this and I'm enjoying this moment right now. As Bob knows
sending stuff, and there's like 5 different channels that come through, and then you're like, "Did you read that thing?" And I'm like, "Shit, I don't even know which thing he's talking about." But there's a pause. There's definitely like a which thing.
You just need a better script, better answer that comes out as a reflex to throw Ben for that second. What other symbols and signs should we be looking for, Ben, as you're then wrapping this up before we then, how do we approach someone who's put us in this situation?
The false smile.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
One side of the smile, right? And there's this little tiny cue where people will just, the end of their lips will turn down just a little bit or up a little bit. You ever given somebody like a little micro compliment and they don't want to like acknowledge that it meant a lot to them, but you see that little tiny change, right? The same thing happens when you shock them or when they're uncomfortable. There's going to be a little bit of a change. You would call that a false smile.
Got
right?
it.
Constantly itching their face.
Which he's doing right now, for those of you who don't realize that this is just a podcast.
Yeah. Pursed lips.
Why would we do that?
The science says that people do that to counteract the dry mouth.
Okay.
That's caused or comes along with lying.
Okay, so there are reasons behind all these things that we're doing that we don't realize we're doing, such as we're looking for an escape route or the dry mouth. We just have to start to research and study what these things are so we can find these tells
And they're
better.
physiological, right? Like they are ingrained in our DNA from thousands of years ago, which is why they're in that limbic system, which is why we have no control over them.
Right.
Yeah. When people get uncomfortable, right, they heat up. When they heat up, they sweat. Sweat can be an indication of lying or truly uncomfortable or some big change in how they're feeling. Probably more common with men. A more common female version would be blushing. Blushing after lying.
I can feel the heat in my head when I'm being put in a position where I have to, massage the truth or whatever. Like, and so it's possible that even in my face, you would see that flush.
Yeah. Or a big smile after they just said something
Got away
like,
with something.
hey, did this one just land? Did that pass that BS through?
Which is us at the end of every episode.
Just simply shaking their head, just a small micro shake.
All right. So now you've given us head to toe things to be looking for in that body language in ourselves so that we can improve our communication and maybe reduce some of the tells we have.
Don't lie.
Okay, that's obvious. That's a give me, right? Maybe our poker game can get better. You've given us some things to watch for in ourselves and watch for in other people. Now, Ben, you're in a conversation with anybody, Bob, me, somebody else, and you're pretty sure you've seen plenty of these. How do you now confront this situation? What do we do now when we're pretty sure they're lying to us? I mean, we're not the police looking for criminals. We're going to arrest you. What would you be doing in our worlds?
Here's one of the most powerful tools that I've used. And I've had employees literally come and say, I can't lie to Ben. I was planning on it. And then I just spilled everything. Like, you just can't do it. And I don't know if that's true or not true, but one of the things that I do is when I can identify a pause or a micro tell, I'll simply re-ask the question or add this little statement to the end or to the beginning. Is that true? Many people will lie once, but they won't lie twice if you called them out on it. So if Bob said, yeah, I got that done, and I feel like it isn't really done, and I'll just look at Bob and I'll say, is that true? And I'll shut up and I'll just stare at him. So right at that moment, he has a decision. Do I double down on the lie or do I come clean? It is a hard position to be in because I've made you think about it. You may have had intentions of getting it done, or it's going to get done before we actually meet. But me asking the question, just out of curiosity, Bob, is that true? Is powerful.
Just that simple question.
It's the most powerful question in lie detecting.
And I think one of the things you've shared with us before is that people will then tell you the truth and then tell you why they didn't give you the truth the first time, right? So it might sound something like, okay, it's not true. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I've got it on my calendar tomorrow because I thought we were going to meet on Friday about it, right?
And you're giving them you're giving somebody the out. So you're saying they don't have to double down on the lie. You've given them the out to be able to backtrack on what they just said.
And I think the reality is if they double down on the lie, more of these tells come out anyway, right? Like they get more uncomfortable having to lie a second time, which now leads to more of these limbic tells.
Well, you think about the job of a leader is to coach and mentor people, to influence them, to persuade them to take action that's going to improve their lives. But I'll tell you a funny story was I ended up in this, we probably might have shared this before, but I ended up at this therapist. We all need therapy, right? So I was in this therapist.
Thursdays, 1:30 to 2:30 is my
right. End up at this therapist, and I'm in there, and he says, "Oh, what are we going to work on, or whatever?" And I tell him, and I go there for about a month, and I walk out of this meeting, this therapy session, and I just started laughing. And here's why I started laughing. I'm like, I just paid this guy $150, and I lied to him the whole time. And I'm like, why did I do that? I'm like, because I wanted him to like me. Like, I didn't want him to know that I didn't do the exercises. Like, I wanted him to like me. And I thought, this is not working for me. When you think about that in coaching, being right and sound and smart isn't the most important thing. It's getting them to take action. So because Bob didn't do this project and I caught him, my goal is to say, you're a liar, right? My goal is to say, what can I do to help you get this done?
Right.
Just out of curiosity, why didn't you feel comfortable coming to me and asking for help? Right? Why did I have to ask you on this? Why is our relationship not at a level where this can be addressed. In Joe Navarro's book, he talked about a interesting study. And I don't know how to use this in business right now because of so many things that we deal with and trying to make sure everybody feels comfortable. But they put some money in the bottom of a Coke machine. And they waited around the corner. And when somebody went to the Coke machine, they found all this extra money in there and they took it out. They put it in their pocket and they started walking back the other direction. And they asked the individuals, hey, did you happen to find any money in the bottom of the Coke machine? And some percent, I'm making this up. So 70% of the people said, no, we didn't find anything.
Okay.
When they took the money, they had them on camera, they put it in their pocket, they walked away, they felt bad, whatever the situation might be. Well, they redid the same experiment. And when the people walked by, before they asked the question, the guy very gently and appropriately took his hand and put it on the person's elbow or shoulder and said, hey, did you happen to find any change in the Coke machine? And something like 70 or 80% of the people said yes and told the truth without one small change. So if you're sitting out there and you're married or you have a spouse or a partner or a honey bunny or kids or whatever, right? The next time you ask a question, just put your little hand on their shoulder or their elbow and say, honey, were you really golfing today? Right? Did you really work till 8? Did you really take the garbage out? Like, just ask the question, add that one little tiny element. So how do you become great at this? You study body language, you watch the videos, you read the books, you pay attention, you observe things and you take notes. You call those things out and you chase the rabbits, right? And you learn these little tiny tactics, like one hand on the shoulder or the elbow if it's appropriate in your relationship, right? Yep. Or asking those questions. And then as you start mastering it, I challenge you to play the body language game. And I love doing this in a meeting or interview or recruiting or sales presentation. I'll see what they're doing, and then I'll do something different and see if I can get them to match me. I'll take my elbows on the table and I'll clasp my hands and lean forward. 9 out of 10 times I can get them to do that. Once I get them to do that, I'll lean back in my seat and fold my arms above my chest and see if I can get them to do that. And I'm going through this whole conversation, basically just screwing with them, seeing if I can get them to mimic my body language.
This is never happening to me again, by the way. I'm on to you now, and it is over.
No, it's not. He just lied. Did you see every tail light up on Bob over there?
What you'll find is that most people don't even know they're doing it.
Correct.
They're mimicking you. It's natural. They don't even think about it. And the reason I bring that up is you have to understand that sometimes your posture and your tells are being mimicked by the person, so they're actually feeding off you. It's not their natural response.
Right.
Right?
Mirror and matching is just natural for us to be doing when we're in the presence of someone who's dominant to us or whatever that might be, that we want to be like them, and we will start to act their way. And you're right, that might ruin a tell.
Now, take some time, read Joe Navarro's book.
What Everybody is Saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other than that, Chad, how do we end these calls?
Well, Ben, before everyone jumps out, I want to remind them, yes, go get What Everybody is Saying by Joe Navarro. And we talked about this a lot in business situations, yet Ben brought it up right at the end. Folks, there is nobody who's going to be a better person for you to practice this on than your teenage kids, because they do not realize the tells that they are throwing out at you, which will give you great practice. So take this lesson into business. Take this lesson home. Make sure you share this episode with the right people. Maybe the people you don't want them to realize what Bob just realized about Ben that he's been doing to him. Maybe you don't share this episode with them, yet share it with everybody else. And then come to the Facebook group, facebook.com/group/winmakegive to join us for more conversation on body language and everything else under our Influence and Persuasion series. Until our next episode, as always, do good.